What's up, guys? Welcome back to the WRPF podcast. I'm your host, Alex Uslar. Episode 39, Justin Zottel. All right. This guy is the scariest, most teddy bearest guy that I know. All right. Look at that cute little chuckle, that cute little smile. He's terrifying when you see him in competition. But then very sweet when you talk to him. And then when you find out he's from Canada, it all makes sense because you Canadians are so goddamn nice. All right. Another international lifter prepping for the Ghost Clash 3. Justin Zottel, welcome, bro.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Justin recently competed at the American Pro 2, competed at the first two Ghost Clashes, getting ready for the third one. Recently at the American Pro 2, solidified his spot with the biggest total in Canada ever, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. So I like to rewind it. We're going to take it back. Let's start from the beginning. Let's hear your journey of finding powerlifting before we get into present day.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I started off quite young as a cyclist. I actually went professional when I was 19 years old, did one pro season, and just hated it. It was too much politics, just too much. It was a lot of, I got burnt out real bad at the end of the year. And I actually gained like a lot of weight between September and January. I went back on my old bodybuilding.com forum pictures, and I'd gained 60 pounds in 3 months. And
Okay,
that
but
was,
hold on. You
yeah,
you need to elaborate on that. You were a pro cyclist?
yeah.
What
So
the fuck is that? Congratulations, you're the first
yeah,
guest on this podcast who is a pro cyclist, and I have
yeah.
no idea what that means.
Yeah, so when I was 16, I won the track national championships for Canada, which track is that inside wooden ring that you see, but it's exponentially scarier when you realize there's no brakes at all. It's fixed gear, and it's like you're on a bank, and so like you're coming downhill super fast. So I started doing that at a young age. My dad got me into that, and I like part of the reason why I'm good at powerlifting is because I just love the pain. Like I love sitting there just in that threshold where you're like, I'm hurting, but I know you're hurting. So let's see who's going to last the longest. And it's part of the reason why I do well powerlifting, because when it's come time to push stuff or like get a little bit scared of a weight, I'm like, if I'm scared, you're scared, and I'm not chickening out. So let's get this next set. So I pushed that for a number of years. I got really lucky with an opportunity. Just like I said, I burnt out really bad. I was a sprinter, so I was a little bit heavier. We were doing a lot of races in the hills, and my overweight butt could not get over the hills. In cycling, overweight is 165 pounds. Uh, so it's very
And you're
difficult.
you're no shrimp. You're like what,
No,
6'3" like me?
I'm 6'1".
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so burnt out pretty hard, and then I actually started as a New Year's resolution or in the weight room. I started with the Jim Stepani shortcut to shred, and started working out, and just kind of like really fell in love with working out. Was lucky enough to have a couple football opportunities after that, and then found a powerlifting gym. Did my first meet, squatted 600 pounds, and I'm like, oh, I'm good at this. I like being good at things, and just like kept going with it.
So while you're training for cycling, virtually what you do to assist for cycling is just more fucking cycling, right? There was no lifting weights at all when that was that portion of your career.
No. I mean, like we would. My dad was very big on the getting kids to do everything type of movement, not just specialize in one thing. Especially up in Canada, I can't ride my bike between October and April. There's just snow everywhere, right? So, and having ADHD, I couldn't sit downstairs on one of those indoor bikes for 3 or 4 hours, so I just drive myself nuts. So he'd have me play like basketball and swimming and cross country skiing and stuff like that. But no weight, no weights. No weights at all. So my upper body's still 242 upper body, not a 308 upper body.
So what do you remember before jumping into the first competition, squatting
Yeah,
600? Super impressive.
yeah,
What was your first exposures to the weight room? And like you said, you found a bodybuilding.com program. Around when was that?
yeah. So that was the Christmas of 2013. That I kind of looked at myself in the mirror and was like, you aren't you. My identity was a cyclist. That's who I was. I was like staring at myself, and I remember I had these like horse pajamas my grandma made me. And I was just like sitting there looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, you're not a cyclist anymore. You got to figure out what you're doing. So I immediately went to the gym. And when I went to the gym, I went super late at night. And there was this guy in the corner. I think everybody who's been to the gym the first time has this story where they walk in a gym and it's usually a dude in a wife beater and jeans, like the good old bro bench press, like 405, like 6 inches off his chest. I'm like, that guy's insane. And I would just like, I'd follow him around and try to do everything he was doing. And he actually ended up introducing me to kind of strength training and all that. And that was kind of my first foray into like quote unquote big weights. But my first real like introduction into powerlifting was I got knocked out when I was playing football, and I went to the hospital and I was kind of sitting there and I needed to pass the time. And just on my kind of, I don't know if it'd be a For You page back then, but the YouTube video of Mark Bell's powerlifting meet of the century came up with the squat show. I just remember watching all those guys, you know, kind of go through and do that. I'm sitting in the hospital, sitting there watching them on my phone, and I'm like, this is cool. I want to do this. Like this is sweet, right? And then I just kind of fell in love with it from there. Signed up to a powerlifting gym. Like the next day, we went after it.
So that's pretty cool. So this was around end of 2013, early
Yeah,
2014. So
yeah,
I mean, powerlifting, that is that era kind of
yeah,
that golden age that so many people I get to converse with that are around our same age,
mhm,
of all those lifters. Mark Bell's resources of watching Brendan Lilly competing at, those original meets, all the rum meets, all those different meets going on. So you were fortunate enough where the town that you're in, you're able just to look up a powerlifting gym and you were able to find a specific powerlifting gym. Because around that time, powerlifting, although there was the kind of those golden lifters, it was still niche enough where Miami didn't fucking have that shit, and a lot of
yeah.
towns
No,
didn't have that shit. So what was that like, that finding that gym and going into that completely different atmosphere so early on?
it was honestly, you know, it's a shame that COVID happened because it took his business away from him. But Brody had this gym and it was called Android Bodies. And we had 5 or 6 of us that were in there just beating the shit out of each other every day. And there was always that competitive hatred, but like love for each other, where it was like, I'm going to push you into deep waters. You're going to push me into deep waters. We're all 21, don't know any better. Like, let's just get after it. And we had some like really, really strong girls. Like, I remember we had this girl, Laura. I think she weighed like 140, 150 pounds. I think she did one of your hybrid meets, and she's like RP 8 and 455 deadlift back then. And it was like, what the frick is going on over here? Right. And it was just super cool to go in there every day. And we would spend like 6, 7 hours in the gym. We didn't know any better. We'd go and I would do my squat workout. Then somebody else would come to me and say, hey, I'm deadlifting today. Can you pace me? And I'm like, absolutely, I'll be there for you. And you look down and like, I've been here for 8 hours. I haven't eaten anything. I need to go. Right. And I love that. I honestly miss that just kind of entrance in the sport because I was young and I could recover from it, but it was just a super, super cool time. Because even in Toronto, we had Fortis, the Jim Fortis, where
Right.
Jeremy Hamilton was training, right? So we all kind of looked at him and that gym, and we're like, oh my goodness, we want to get that.
So were majority of these lifters that you're lifting with at this gym, it was raw. It was still raw
Yeah,
or wraps and
yeah,
stuff like that. So it
yeah,
was it was already kind of that new wave, and everyone was kind of in on that new wave, watching all these new people. Because a lot of people, their early exposures, if they've found a niche powerlifting gym, it's all like these single ply, multiply guys, and you're just kind of
yeah,
this young kid. But that's cool. You're able to find the modern version of what it was at the time, right? Because that was
yeah,
the new age and the new era of powerlifting. And like you mentioned, Jeremy Hamilton. If you guys don't know who Jeremy Hamilton is, you've maybe heard us talk about on and off on this podcast, like those early rum days, the battles of the 220, when you had Dan Green, Jeremy Hamilton, you had Kevin Oak, you had all these guys battling at 220, doing these insane weight cuts at the time. And Jeremy Hamilton was one of the greatest. And he
yeah.
had such a short career. But correct me if I'm wrong. I think he holds the heaviest Canadian dots of all time, right?
He has it in sleeves. There's a guy that no one knows about. His name's Joel. I'm not going to say his last name in case he doesn't want to be found out, but he has like a 573 dots at 198. And like he has the wraps one. Jeremy, I think, is 563. I'm gonna try to chip that. I shouldn't verbalize that, whatever. I'm gonna try to chip that February 3rd at a meetup here in Burlington as a tune-up meet for Ghost before I put my wraps on. I think I'll have to total like 22:48 to do that or something like that. But yeah, no,
Let's
I'm
wait to get there. I want to hear about that later because you haven't
okay,
competed
fair.
in sleeves in a while. So I'm excited to hear
No,
that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, those early years you get in. So, according to Open Powerlifting, your first competition was 2015. Was that your first competition, or are there other competitions not listed on there?
No, unfortunately, as Fernando continues to remind me, I'm a vet in the sport. I'm so old the technology wasn't there when we first started. And I had
Or,
2 weeks.
or, or better yet, Canada,
Yes,
we were
yes.
talking about, is
Yeah,
multiple years behind.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they didn't have the technology that
Yeah,
we did
fair.
already have.
Fair.
Because I mean,
Okay,
you see
fair.
everyone else from
Yeah.
that time it's on there. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I had one or two meets. I know I had a meet. I might have only done one meet in 2014, but it was like in February around my birthday. And that meet, I walked in like 230 pounds, and I had those like you know the Russian weightlifting knee wraps.
of course,
Like
yeah,
I thought
fabric
those,
and ace bandages.
I thought those were really, really good. They're like 1.5 meters. I'm like, yes, this helps me squat. And then I showed up in a Velcro chic like bodybuilding belt, and they're like, you can't wear that. I'm like, why? So somebody lent me an old belt. So I ended up squatting like 600. I benched 345 and pulled 600. And that was like I was like, oh, I like this. I'm good at this. I want to keep doing this. And it just became an addiction from there to kind of carry on.
So what was so that you said that was 2014, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So what was the state of competitions there in Canada at that time? Were you having to travel far to find them? Were they like, here and there, one or two competitions, or was it pretty popular?
Yeah, so geographically speaking, you got to remember I forget what it's a crazy percentage of Canadian population is all within 3 hours of itself. Right? So we have a lot of meets kind of in the general Toronto area, whether it's Guelph or Burlington or even out to Ottawa is about 5 hours away, but they're all kind of within that area in Ontario anyways. There's nothing really north. So it was like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive, but nothing great distance, no.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that about Canada, that it's
Yeah,
one very densely populated area and the rest is just super rural.
yeah, absolutely. Like outside of Ontario, it's a lot more spread out. But in Ontario, it's huge. Like anything kind of south of Ottawa, that's just kind of where the majority of the population in Canada is.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So going to your first listed history um on open powerlifting, you compete at a Canadian national meet.
yeah.
CPF. What federation is that?
Oh man, that was a funny meet. That's WPC,
Okay.
World Powerlifting Congress. That meet was hilarious. It was like a 16 and a half hour day. There wasn't that many competitors. There was one mono in the warm-up room, one deadlift bar, and it was like people, going like I was trying to squat 660, which I thought, I was just the best at that point. And there's people like opening with like 300. We're like trying to figure out how to make one monolift work. But that's the one thing about Canada. Monoliths have been very, very scarce for a number of years. I think we have like maybe five open gyms across Ontario. That's it. I might be overestimating, to be honest. We just got another one, so we might be at five now. But monoliths aren't a big thing up here, so it was very interesting to show up. Like, what the hell is this thing? Like, how do I use it? And I tried squatting out of it. My feet were too close on the first one. It was a nightmare.
Well, it's funny you say that because in general, around that time, 2014, 2015, I love to talk about all the modern day divas. You know what I mean? And people complain if there isn't 87 deadlift bars in the back and 2,000 monolifts for them to choose their rack heights and shit like that. But those early days, a lot of that's what we had, and we
Yeah,
didn't know any better. It might have been kind
yeah.
of annoying and stuff, but it was affecting so many people's performances equally. It's funny how much we've evolved where it's
We
like
didn't,
if you
we
don't
didn't,
have that, then it's like, what
yeah.
the fuck is this, you know?
Well, we didn't know what bars we were going to be using. We didn't know what bench it was going to be. You know what I mean? And now it's like a requisite that we know exactly what we're going into. Um, yeah, I'm a diva, so I can't talk too much shit on this.
But also at the end of the day, it also is the sport people want it to be more and more professional. They want it to
Yeah,
grow more and more and more. That stuff is important. It's
yeah,
extremely important for it to be uniform, proper standards, consistency of equipment, consistency of flight, whatever it is, you know. But before It was powerlifting was so it was very much fucking backyard. And even if it's a nationals like that competition says it was, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Nationals of Canada doesn't really, like, sorry to spoil it for everybody, but Nationals doesn't really mean a whole lot in Canada. We have now like 13 federations for like 700 lifters, and so because it's so sparse, I did the math on it one time. There's like up to 2,000 national champions in any given weight class. That is just like it's too much. We need to figure out a way to get a unified national championship up here to make nationals mean something. But yeah, like every federation has a nationals up here, and it's just like there's a million national champions in every weight class, so it's kind of
Yeah.
silly.
It kind of dilutes of what an actual accomplishment is.
Yeah,
We're all for having, low hanging accomplishments to
yeah,
climb up a rung, but I think that's why, the WRPF USA here has done a really good job of implementing like regional level meets, et cetera, to
yeah,
kind of earn your way up to a national level meet so that it's not just literally, a gold medal handed out
yeah,
with all those different things. But that's also what makes it difficult when there's so many different weight classes, divisions, et cetera.
yeah,
And that's why I've always, from Ghost, all 3 years of Ghost Clash, rewind back to 3 years before that, the Hybrid Showdown 1, 2, and 3, they've always only been open.
yeah,
Open only. If you want, a participation, senior, junior, I don't know what medal, then, go somewhere else. And I think that that's important also to kind of have that for some of our higher level
yeah.
meets. Um, but yeah, so
Well,
getting into then the year 2016, right? 2016, you compete, 2016, 2017, those next couple of years, you compete a ton back to back. And just to kind of recap, from that first competition listed here on open powerlifting, you had a 448 dots. That was big. That was impressive at that time,
mhm,
especially competing at local level meets.
yeah.
I'm assuming you walk into a meet there in Canada, you're putting up your shit, you're hot shit for these. They're like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was always kind of funny because, now I have a different mental outlook. I've flipped 180 entirely because back then, sure enough, I'd walk in the gym and I'd be like, just a raging asshole. I would not be nice. I'd be screaming, smashing my head off stuff. Like, you thought I was bad at the first ghost for first screaming and whatnot. That was nothing. I've calmed down a lot over the years because I did think my shit didn't stink. And then I remember, I forget who it is, and I'm gonna get yelled at for this. No, I don't. I remember watching Tom Kai double my one rep max at the time, and he was like 80 pounds lighter than me. And I'm like, oh, I'm not actually good, because back then it wasn't open powerlifting, it was something else. You had to have a subscription to see your rankings, and I was too cheap to do it. And I never even saw it. And then when open powerlifting came out, all of a sudden, like, oh, I'm like really far down the rankings. I have
Right.
a lot of work to do before I can, even think like that, right? So over the time, as I've gotten better and better and better, it feels like so many more people have gotten even better than I have. So I've like really toned down that, like, I deserve to have my own, combo rack or monolith like Andre Milanichev, like, no, I don't. Just wait your turn and get in the warm-up room.
I like it. But also, like what we talked about before we started recording, and what we'll kind of get into as we get into current years, Canadian powerlifting as a whole is and I find this for a lot of international out of the US places, it's a couple years behind. And
Yeah,
whether that's on the level of competition, like I said, back then a 450 dots at a local level meet in the US would have been really big. Probably in Canada it was even fucking bigger of a deal. You know what
yeah,
I mean? So those take me through those years 2016, 2017 of you competing, getting stronger, getting up to a 2,000 pound total in 2017, just a couple years of the sport. That's huge,
yeah,
right? Like that was now a 2,000 pound total is a huge milestone and accomplishment. But back then that was massive, breaking over
yeah,
500 dots. So
yeah.
take me through that.
Yeah, so I did a number of shows. I went to WPC Worlds, and I kind of mentally ruined myself because for like 30 weeks straight, 36 weeks straight it was, I ate the same thing 3 meals a day. I laser focused in. I was driving a truck, every day, delivering parts, and I was just obsessed with it. And like every day I'd go to the gym, just have absolutely stellar sessions because I was this 22, 23-year-old kid with nothing but a bunch of, ambition and nothing but time on his hands to be perfect, right? And I laser focused in for that. And it totaling 1934 to 236 body weight as a junior. And I remember that going viral on Reddit. I didn't even know what Reddit was. My buddy sent me a link, and I'm like, holy, that's really sweet. Somebody posted about me. And that was kind of my first eye-opening experience where it was like, hey, listen, like you're going to be good at this. You need to like go all in on this. And I remember after, I think it was my Arnold's meet where I squatted 700 the first time. I'd often thought about it previous to this, but I knew that day I was like, I'm going to be the best. Like, I don't care what I have to do. Like, this is now my life. This is the direction's going, and everything can just get pushed to the side. And I just kind of really obsessed over those years. And then when you take a look at 2018, I just disappeared. And I think I took 2 years off, I think it was. And it was literally because, my ex-wife is now my ex-wife for a reason, kind of put her foot down. She's like, hey, listen, like you've taken this too far. Like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing at home. You need to stop this. So I left the sport for 2 years and I fought. I was doing Muay Thai, mixed martial arts, and having an awful lot of time, awful lot of fun doing that stuff, but always kind of keeping in my background. Like I was watching people, in the sport just kind of develop. And it was bugging me when people were passing me like really bad. I'm like, that's my record. Get away from it. Like you're getting a little bit too close for my liking. And then I remember the day I decided to come back. I think it was right before COVID or right in the middle of it. I forget what it was. But somebody that I'd beaten for a number of years posted something like, oh, if you want to compete with the best powerlifter in Canadian history, I'll be at this meet. And my ex-wife showed it to me. I'm like, So I literally got Instagram back that day. No followers, just posted on his post. I'm like, have you already forgotten who I am? And then I pressed send. I'm like, oh crap, I'm back. And then yeah, the rest has been really good. Like it's been a big adventure, and lessening the quote unquote importance in my daily life of powerlifting and wrapping up my total with who I am. The second I did that, my total just shot up. Like it was absolutely insane how quick it shot up, and then how I got recognized, and going to the first Ghost and going through that was absolutely just an incredible experience. Being on the same platform as Shane and Dan just blew me away.
So take me through. So the 2018, we have that huge pause. You said
Yeah,
from 2018 to 2020, and then that's when you found powerlifting again.
yeah,
You start training again.
yeah,
Lockdown restrictions in Canada, super
yeah,
nuts, super fucked. You're still
yeah.
able to train. Did you compete again before the Ghost Clash one, or were you
Yes.
training?
Yeah, yeah, I did. So I had an unfinished basement in a two-bedroom house. So I did two full competition platforms, a combo rack for myself, a combo rack for my ex-wife, all the weights. I had an old PowerTech Universal machine, which is like my favorite one piece, all body machine, dumbbells, and we did LED lights through the rafters and stuff. And we did like a quote unquote like nationals in my buddy's garage because it got canceled. And I remember going into that and I did no belts, no sleeves. And I was just back into cycling at that point. And it was like a 4 month prep. And I totaled 1934 beltless with sleeves. And I'm like, okay, like we got stronger, not powerlifting.
But that was a
Like,
mock meet. That wasn't sanctioned.
yeah, but like I mean, like you've seen me lift. I don't need judges to tell me if I lifted a standard.
For
I know
sure.
I
For
don't
sure.
usually wait for their lights. I know if I got it or not.
But so did you have an actual sanction
No,
competition? So
no.
how did you then? So then the Ghost Clash, you were able to get in the open registration portion
Yeah.
of it, right? And you were able
Ye-
to sign up.
Yeah, like I talked to because I had met Dan Bell in 2015 at the Arnold, and he was somebody who always kind of kept me under his wing, and he would often remind me like, "Don't make this so important. You're obsessing about it. Like nobody cares. It's powerlifting. Stop. Not nobody cares, but like general people. Like you're gonna be on the sport one day. You need to have a life outside of this." And he was always a really good sounding board for that. I didn't always listen to him, to be honest with you. Often didn't, but in hindsight, it was some of the best advice I ever got. And he vouched for me with you to get me into that meet, because I was like, hey, let's go do this other meet together. He's like, screw that meet, we're doing this one. So he
Okay,
got
that's
he
right.
yeah, so he got me in. You reached out, and I'm like, oh my, okay, I'm doing it. And that September, actually, right before the meet, my ex-wife left, And I was just devastated. I didn't eat for a month, and I was like, I wasn't even gonna come. And then I remember talking to my buddy. He's like, "So Dan Bell personally vouched for you, and you're not showing up. Buy your plane ticket, or I am." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll buy my plane ticket." And I wasn't honestly planning on competing after that meet. That was going to be it. And when I was in the warm-up room, every single one of my warm-ups, and I don't know if Dan told the boys to do this, but either Dan, Shane Haller, or Pat McGuire were back spotting me for every single one of my warm-ups in the warm-up room. And like they made me feel like I was at home again. And I'm like, okay, I love the sport too much. Like this is what's happening. We're coming back, like we full focus. Like my life might be, ripped apart, ripped in half right now, but it doesn't matter. Like we're doing this thing.
I'll tell you what, man, like not to toot my own horn or anything like
Yeah,
that, for that to be after 4 years of not competing, only ever competing in for the most part competing in the Canadian powerlifting scene, with the exception of traveling for the WPC meets and
yeah,
stuff like that. That is that's a huge experience to come back to. Pro
yeah,
level meet, when over all these years, I'm sure you were watching the pro circuits and watching
yeah,
all these pro meets going on. That's a huge, huge, huge comeback to kind of come to with all those other circumstances going
yeah,
on. And with
yeah.
that, you come back and you PR your raw total, right?
Yep. Yeah, I had it in my mind that I was somehow going to beat Shane Hunt. I don't know where that confidence came from. I didn't deserve it, but I really lined up all my third attempts. Like if I hit my thirds and he goes 8 for 9, I'm gonna beat him. And then I missed all my third attempts. But it was honestly a lot of fun. And it was funny because I remember complaining about the heat afterward, like people complain about the heat afterwards, and I'm like, man, there's like 2 feet of snow in Canada. I'm not saying anything about the heat in this gym. This is perfectly fine. Let's do it again.
Dude, you know what the worst part is? It's so frustrating because that's just how Miami and South Florida is. If
Yeah,
you were in Miami 3 days before the meet,
yeah.
it was so nice,
Oh,
bro.
was it?
Like in the 70s, so cool, perfect weather. Next, thing you know, weekend hits, and that's the way it is right now. And here in January,
Okay.
last week it was freezing. We had to wear hoodies, and now it's hot as sin outside. Just a couple of days
Really?
later, that's the trippy thing about Miami. You
Jeez.
can never properly plan. There's this huge competition every year called Wadapalooza here in Miami.
Yeah.
Always in January, been going on for 10 years. It's a CrossFit competition. And it's outdoors, fully outdoors, Bayfront Park on the water in Miami. Every fucking year, it never fails. Even if it doesn't show in the forecast, it rains.
Oh, jeez.
This year, it got rained out only on the third day on Sunday,
Yeah.
but Miami just fucking sucks like that. But that was so
Yeah.
frustrating to be going into that meet. I'm like, oh, the weather's perfect. The weather's perfect. The weather's perfect. That day, the grossest, muggiest fucking day. But yeah, you guys made it happen. And for
Yeah.
me,
It was a
it's
lot
a
of fun.
learning lesson and how I need to look for better venues and
Yeah.
change things up.
Yeah. I didn't, yeah, like I said, because coming from Canada, like at that point in time, the only like actual quote unquote decent venue we had was it's going to sound weird, but it was awesome. It was a basement, it was a huge basement auditorium at a university. And that was like the best venue he had because outside of that, they're like in small CrossFit gyms or worse, sorry for people to do this, in a high school gymnasium. Like that's where all of our venues were. So I walked in the venue and I was pumped. I'm like, all right, let's go. Sweet venue. Like this is nice. And everybody's complaining about it after. I'm like, y'all need to come up here for a couple of meets. Like, be grateful.
Right. So after that meet, you've competed 4 times since the Ghost Clash one,
Yeah,
February 2022, competed all in wraps, have added massive amounts to your fucking total since then, right?
yeah,
Your recent performance in the American Pro, two, absolutely crazy, sick fucking day, and that's going fucking 7 for 9, right? Leaving a ton in the tank. So take me through now getting back into the sport, the evolution of how, because I mean, over the years, you were making constant gains, but to
yeah.
go from where you were just 2 years ago to now have been leaps and bounds. So, like you said, you did a lot of mental evolution, changing of training styles, changing of coaching. So, kind of take me through these recent years.
Yeah, so when I went after my 2,200 pound total, it was kind of funny because I had another lull, right? Because then I really started drinking my Kool-Aid. I'm like, man, I am the best. Like, like y'all don't know nothing, right? And then I went back to the Ghost Clash 2 and just pooed the bed everywhere. I know you don't agree. because we've had this conversation. But to me, it was like the worst day of my life. Like I bawled after my second deadlift. I went outside and just bawled, and like it was bad, man. I was really upset with how I did because it just mattered a lot to me, you know. And I got my third bench, which is freaking hilarious. I remember telling the boys, I'm like, I'm shot in the dark. There's no chance I'm getting this. And I got it. I'm like, okay, well, at least I had something to smile about today. But it was funny because after that meet, I had to take a real evaluation and say, listen, like what I'm doing is not working. It's not my coach's fault. You know, it's not my nutritionist's fault. It's just something's not jiving with me. So I ended up making the change. I hired Joe Sullivan, and that was just like the second I did that, I remember my first week of program, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like I'm looking at the stuff he has me programmed. He's like, you promised to buy into the pro. You just need to trust me and just do this. And I'm like, oh, okay, man. Like we'll see what happens. I remember the first time, it was maybe 5 or 6 weeks into it, I was begging for a barbell. I'm like, dude, you need to give me something on my back. Like this is getting ridiculous. I remember the first time, I put a barbell on my back and I just felt how tight I was able to get. I'm like, oh, this is different. Okay, this is really different. And going into the American Pro was super cool because that was our first prep together. And as you know, as a coach, the first prep is wonderful. You're going to see some sort of, relative gain, some sort of, addition in numbers or at least momentum. But after that first one, you get your data and then you can really start cooking. And that's what's been really, really fun for me because, I didn't feel like I had the greatest bench and deadlift prep, to be honest. They still showed up on the day. Like I moved 2.5 kilos less than my PR on bench at very, very quickly. And even my second deadlift was a PR. Just that top end wasn't quite there. So after that, Joe looked at me and said, okay, I know what we got to do. And I'm already seeing it turning over right now. And I'm just like, okay, we're going to have another, hopefully really big PR total at the Ghost because everything's feeling really easy right now.
I love it. And something
Yeah.
if you look at, you analyze like me, I'm obviously going to analyze and critique. You look at where you were at from the Ghost Clash 2 to the American Pro 2, even in that short period of time, changing coaching style, changing all that. But also something that's so key is attempt selection, right? Like your attempt selection was that's what you left a lot on the board at the Ghost
Yeah.
Clash 2.
Yeah.
Huge jumps, kind of over ambitious, whatever it is, not adjusting for the day. And that's where it's also very beneficial to have a veteran coach, someone like Joe, there on the
Yeah.
day of modifying, chipping, adding chips here, there, and the other. So you're not
Yeah.
making a 50, 60 pound jump, right? Or a 100 pound jump like you did on your deadlifts.
Yeah, like Joe, Joe handles me a similar way I handle all of our clients. Like he is very there. Like I remember telling him afterwards because I couldn't sleep after the meet for reasons, and we're just texting him like, I actually forgot you had other athletes today. Like I forgot that Pat existed. I forgot that Briani was there, who you probably should have been with the whole time, not me. And then Pat, I was talking to Pat. He's like, I forgot you existed because Joe was just everywhere at once. And it was really cool because after my second squat, we had the conversation in the back and they're like, hey, like, what are we going to hit? And I'm like, I don't know if I can hit anymore. And they're like, what do you mean you blew it up? And for me, just the kabuki bar was rocking me and rolling so much. I'm like, this bar is beating the snot out of me. And I was really nervous. I was thinking about calling my third attempt and just not doing it. And Joe like looked me down the eyes. He's like, listen, I've been here before. I know what we have to do. Do you trust me? And I'm like, yep. He's like, all right, I'm loading the bar. Let's go chat. Right. And then I even remember going back and listening to the live stream because that's how, my ADHD works. I was like, I actually went back and listened to Garrett talk with the live stream. And he's like, you see, he just has to keep it to the last 6 inches and then he has it. So the whole way down, I'm like, okay, just get to the last 6 inches. And I blew it up and it was, 3/4 of the way up, I registered that it was actually kind of hard. And then I got fired up and it was super fun.
It was fun to see, man. It was
Yeah.
these being there, being able to see these last few competitions, seeing how things have evolved, seeing how you as a lifter has evolved. That's why I said you're the scariest motherfucker because you're a fucking maniac, but also a big sweet teddy bear. And I love it, dude. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah, yeah. I remember talking to I was talking to John Dorsey and Dan at the second Ghost, and they're making fun of me because I just like ran over your stage and like nearly knocked over the whole banister at the back when I came out for my first squat. And then afterwards, I'm sitting in the back with my Hawaiian shirt on and my glasses, and John's like, "You're just a big nerd, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I really am."
So coming off the American Pro 2, turning around into the Ghost Clash 3, right?
Yeah.
Originally, you hadn't committed to the Ghost Clash 3 until after the fact, where you're like, you know what? I think I got some unfinished business. I think I want to turn it around, not
Yeah.
take a huge long off season as some people traditionally would do, right?
Yeah. No, for me, it wasn't even about that, to be honest with you. I just felt like I didn't deserve to be there. I'd not done well at the last two Ghost Clashes, and I honestly didn't want to take a spot from somebody because I didn't feel like I deserved to be there. I'm like, I'm going there, yeah, okay, whatever. I did X on wraps, but like this year the wraps class was significantly less talented, we'll call it, than the sleeved one was, right?
Right.
Like I remember Shane saying, he's like, so if I had to just thrown on a pair of knee wraps, I would have won more money. And I'm like, yep. And so for the
Right.
next 2 weeks, I would text him every time I spent money, be like, hey, just spending your money here at lunch, right? But I felt like I didn't deserve it. I honestly didn't. And then after the American Pro, and then having someone like Joe by my side, I'm like, I never want to compete without that person right there. And I knew he had a couple athletes lined up to go. So I'm like, all right, like I'm going to see if I can beg Alex to see if I can go. And I got on the wait list, and here we are. We're going back to Miami.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love it. So turning around, going into the Ghost Clash 3, like you said, last meet you more than earned it. You added
Yeah.
fucking, 100 pounds practically to your total with more in the tank, totaling just under 2,300. Looking forward at the Ghost Clash 3, looking forward beyond the Ghost Clash 3, what are some of those goals that you feel comfortable vocalizing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like when I squatted 550 something like early on 2014, I told the guys on that when I went to go play football, I'm gonna squat a grand. And they all laughed at me. And I'm like, all right. And I still got names. I had screenshots. I'm waiting to send them. And they know it's coming because I joke with them all the time. And so that's a big one. I want to squat 1,000 pounds. And then once I squat 1,000 pounds, I'm never not going to squat 1,000 pounds. I don't care if I have to wear Leviathan squat suit and reverse band that thing. I am going to squat 1,000 pounds to the day I die. But beyond that, like, I mean, the next goal is 2,400. I know people won't like that because it's a big jump, but I've always had really big goals. I've had really big ambitions. Whether or not they're founded is another story, but I know with a coach like Joe, he'll make sure I'm grounded at all times. So for me, going into the Ghost, making it close with Shane Haller would be real nice. That would be wonderful. But beyond that, I just want to keep pushing my way up that list. Like right now, I think I'm ranked 54th all time. I'd like to jump a few spots and then, kind of eventually chase down the number one spot at 308, which is getting more and more difficult because Andrew House is a real person. So,
It's so funny to talk about that first goal of what you said back in 2014, saying I'm going to squat 1,000 pounds.
yeah,
There was like fucking three men at that time who had
yeah,
squatted 1,000 pounds,
yeah,
right? Eric Lillibridge, Andre Milechev, and then maybe Ray Williams had done it already, and
yeah,
that
already done
was
it.
fucking it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Nobody else. So I guarantee you, so many newbie lifters or people coming up at that time were like, I want to do that one day.
yeah,
99.5% of them, 99.9% of them never did and never will.
yeah,
It's really fucking cool for you to be able to vocalize that. And then
yeah,
now you're within fucking 46 pounds of it. That's,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, like if all things, like to be honest with you, like if all things go well, I'd like to load it at least at Ghost. Like we'll see if Joe lets me do that. He might make me wait till meet later on in the year. But like with how my prep's going right now, I have a sleeved meet coming up here in Canada, which is important for me to do to compete in Canada once in a while. I have a sleeved meet on the third, and I just squat. I'm gonna release a video of it in a few days. I just squatted 865 yesterday in sleeves. And like I didn't even I felt like trash. I was like 11 hours in the car for the 2 days before, not enough sleep, not enough food, like nothing felt right. You can even see my squat, I'm all loose and whatnot. And like I was having conversations with myself on the way down, like, wow, I'm really glad I have these spotters here with me today. And then like I hit the hole, I'm like, oh no, I got this. And like we launched it up and I'm okay. So hoping to squat around 880 to 903 on the third at like no more than a nine, so I can throw my knee wraps on and kind of make a charge for like 975 to 1,000. But the cool thing for me is if I can squat 975 and bench 565 at the Ghost, that's a subtotal that equals my first meets total in 2014.
I love it.
Yeah.
And that's the ADD brain that you're just like
Yeah.
seeing all this weird
Yeah. Oh
shit,
yeah.
like fucking
Yeah.
Rain Man, a
Yeah.
Beautiful Mind. You see this writing on the wall. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, whoa, this plus this. No one else
Yeah.
gives a fuck about it, but
Yeah.
it's those little
Yeah.
things that keep us going, right?
Yeah. Well, Joe posted the other day he's like, oh, has anybody else put 1,000 pounds on their total since I started? I'm like, man, I have to total 25, 45 to put 1,000 pounds on my total.
And that just goes back to those early days. It's like
Yeah.
the first total meet to be that high, that was a rare thing. That was something that's special, and that's
Yeah.
how it defines the outliers early
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how many more outliers we have nowadays.
Yeah,
There's
like
so many more.
we have a client, his name is Liam, and he did his first meet, and after his opening deadlift, he totaled 2,000. And I'm like, hey, some people work really hard to get there. And then after his second pull, he got 2050. And I'm like, hey, and after his 30, he totaled 2,100 pounds. But hey, some people worked 8 years to get there. When you're doing your first meet, right? I'm like, I
Right.
hate, and he's 275. I'm like, I hate you. Like, he's a brother to me, but I'm like, I hate you so much right now. Like, get away from me. But like we're seeing it more and more because, the things you guys are doing on your ends is still, even though it's not in Canada, it is still pumping that kind of, quote unquote media up here. And it's getting a lot of people really interested. And we're seeing higher and higher level, like, athletes come into the sport, which is really, really pushing it. And I really think like I'll be probably the last of the generation where you can just kind of come in, like a slob or like an overweight person and show up and, kind of get to the top because we're going to see all these, these athletic freaks come up. Like I had a 15-year-old girl that I trained and she just squatted 345 in sleeves.
That's
And I'm
nuts.
like, I'm like, what was I doing at 15? I was riding a bike, right? That's what I was doing, right? Like,
Hey, bro, don't knock your bike riding because
yeah,
again, foundations are built
yeah,
one
yeah,
way or another.
yeah,
If you do something athletic,
yeah, 100%.
and that built that base of those fucking legs that are getting you 1,000 pound squat.
Yeah,
If
I
you would
wish
have
I'd
been
done
just
more
sitting
push-ups.
playing Fortnite until you were 19 years old, who fucking knows?
Hey man, don't be knocking Fortnite. It's a good time.
If you were a true nerd,
Yeah,
but
fair, fair.
I love it, dude. I'm excited to see it. We're 12 weeks out from the Ghost
Yeah.
Clash. I loved hearing about your story. I loved hearing about the evolution of Justin Zottel. Sign us out, man. Let everyone know where they could find you.
Yeah, so you can find me personally on Instagram at Full Zottle. And then our coaching team page is at Team Zottle. And I got a list of sponsors and all that stuff. So sponsored by Barefoot Shoes, Cerberus, Vanilla Gorilla Nutrition, and just got picked up by Leviathan Nutrition as well. So super excited and happy for that.
Hell yeah. Thank you for hopping on, bro. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the WRPF podcast.